Clarifications, please. Mr. Patrick Day.
I just have two clarifications for Minister. Firstly, on my suggestion to do an in-depth study to assess the mental health and wellness of our teachers and educators and whether MOE intends to embark on that. Second question is on the removal of mid-year exams for primary and secondary school, which is upcoming. Does it also mean that in the mid-year there will not be any sit-down tests as well as weighted assessments? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, to Mr. Patrick Day's first clarification, yes, indeed, we are closely monitoring the mental well-being of our educators and students, given the exceptional circumstances that we are in at this point in time. We do regular dipsticks, so it's not just a one-time survey. We regularly monitor this, and we have a certain baseline to see whether there are specific areas that we should be concerned with, not just in general for the whole teaching population, but also very specifically whether any particular schools or any particular group of educators might be facing a bit more stress than others. So that's the assurance that we can give Mr. Patrick Day. To Mr. Patrick Day's second questions about the doing away with the mid-year examinations, what we will have, and increasingly we have already done this in all our schools, is that we have a series of continuous assessments. In fact, when I first went to MOE, I have asked my colleagues, what's the difference between an exam and a test or assessment? I learned this new word, and I understand what my professionals are doing. A continuous assessment examines our students' ability to apply what they have learned based on various modules. When it comes to the year-end exam, we have this term called the synoptic assessment, which is that they are able to pull together different parts of what they have learned to answer different questions. So it takes a much more broader perspective for it. So we will continue to have year-end exams where relevant, and then we will couple that with continuous assessment, modules by modules. Thank you.
Mr. Darryl David.
Thank you, Chairman. Just two clarifications on Minister. The first involves PSLE. Some time ago, I made a speech where I did not suggest that we should remove the PSLE, but rather, while we have PSLE, to also incorporate some coursework components such that every primary 6 student ends up with an actual composite grade that is a combination of the PSLE exam and the coursework component that they've done, maybe a 70% exam, 30% coursework. Just wanted to ask Minister if Ministry is considering this, and if so, could you provide some thoughts on this? Second clarification is about teachers. I mentioned earlier that I'm really happy about the quality of our teachers. They've undergone some really good training, but I also talked about the possibility of encouraging or having more mid-career teachers coming in from other jobs, other industries into the teaching profession to bring the experience with them. This can also be synced in quite nicely with continuing education and making sure that our people are trained to move into a different career. Could Minister perhaps update or share if the Ministry has any plans to enhance this or to have this as a more structured program for mid-career switchers to come into the teaching profession? Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, if I may take the second question first, and then I'll come back to the first question, which I will give a more elaborate reply.
Sure.
Okay.
Proceed.
On Mr. Darryl David's suggestion on having more mid-career teachers, indeed, we have a healthy pipeline of teachers who join us mid-career. every week I visit at least 1 or 2 schools, and every time when I visit the schools, I will always ask about their prior experience. And just from my random sampling, I can see that we have a very healthy pipeline of people who are mid-career and decide to join the teaching service. And as Mr. Darrell David says, they do bring back a wide spectrum of prior experiences that they can share with their teachers, fellow teachers, and also the students. Now, having said that, I think we need it to be both ways, meaning that we need to recruit a fair share of mid-career teachers to enrich our portfolio of teaching experiences. At the same time, we must also enable our existing teachers in service to go out and build new connections and also to refresh themselves. As I've always mentioned, I have never seen any of my teachers who are afraid of hard work. But instead, I think when they work hard, they want to feel that they themselves are growing. They also have the development opportunities so that they can feel refreshed, they can feel recharged. And if they feel refreshed and recharged, then I'm very confident they will continue to spread this spirit of lifelong learning, of a spirit of inquiry to their students. So we'll continue to do that both ways, to have more mid-career people coming into service and also to have more people in service going out to have exposure. And this is particularly important for our Polytechnic and IT lecturers. Mr. Chair, on the first question of PSLE, I must share what is on my mind. I have given this very serious thought, and I've listened very carefully to what Ms. Denise Phua have said over the years. And the fundamental issue is this. Why are our exams stressful? Why? I've given a lot of thought about it, and I perhaps sum it up in these 4 dimensions. Why are our exams stressful? We then have to ask ourselves why we test, how we test, when we test, and what do we do with the test result. Now, if we are not clear with our answers to these 4 questions, then exams will always be stressful. Never mind if it's PSLE or year-end exams. Let me start with why we test. If we see a test or an assessment as an opportunity for us to know ourselves better, to know our children better, where they stand, where they are strong at, where they are weak at, then this self-assessment should not be stressful. It is about surpassing ourselves rather than surpassing other people. But if we get this wrong, if the reason for testing is to compare with other people on a relative scale, then by definition, any test will be stressful. If that is to sort people out according to their different abilities with serious consequences in their careers, pathways, then it will be stressful. So the first point I want to make is this. If we truly want our exam to be less stressful, we need to reorientate our perspective to why we test. And from MOE's perspective, we want all our assessments to be a feedback to our students and our parents on how the respective child is doing. It is how the respective child is doing vis-a-vis his previous self or her previous self, and not how he or she is doing with vis-a-vis other students. We want to do away with this incessant comparison on a relative scale, to truly appreciate what the child is strong in and what the child may be weak at, and we need to help the child. Now the second is how we test. I think many members have spoken and we agree. Going forward, tests will be less and less to do with rote memory work. Instead, going forward, it will be about how our children can apply the concepts they have learned to solve tomorrow's problem. Coming from NTUC and MTI, I can speak on behalf of the employers. All progressive employers are less and less interested in how our students are able to solve yesterday's problem with yesterday's solution, or even today's problem with yesterday's solution. All our progressive employers are looking for our students to be able to solve tomorrow's problems with tomorrow's solution, which means that more and more of our tests must gear towards helping our students to prepare to apply their knowledge in solving tomorrow's problem in context. Now, that doesn't mean that the test will get easier. In fact, some people will think that test by rote memory is easier. But that is not the skill set that we are looking for. As many members say, today with Google and the internet, anyone can go onto the Google and the internet to search for the information they require. The new skill set that is required is how we make sense of the plethora of information sources and combine them and create new solutions in context. So that is how we test. Now, whether that is more or less stressful, it depends on our perspective again. Then the third question is, when we test, if we test too early as a national exam, as many members have said, then it might be detrimental to some of the late bloomers, it might be detrimental to some of our younger children. But on the other hand, if we test too late, we will be unable to apply the interventions necessary to help our children to progress at a pace that's suitable to them. So somewhere in between testing too early and testing too late, we need to find the Goldilocks point that is just right. And we'll continue to study this. And I must qualify. Given the diversity of our learners, it's very hard to say that there is just one point for everyone. But to the extent that we can, we will find that point, be it PSLE or otherwise, to cater to the bulk of our students. But the assurance that we want to give to everyone is this: that one point doesn't and will not define a person's future forever. We have a process of what SM Taman called continuous meritocracy, where it is about continuous assessment performance that determines one's achievement in life, and not just on a single point and a single assessment. And that should not be our attitude. Otherwise, we instill fear in our students. Then the final question is, what do we do with the test results? If our attitude and answer to the first question of why we test is, this is a self-assessment to find out the strengths and weaknesses of our students so that we can best apply the resources to help them fulfill their potential, then what we do with the test result, the definition of success for that is that we apply the correct resources, apply the correct pathways to the students that require the necessary help. And it is not about everybody going to a particular school that is deemed as most popular or most successful. If we take that attitude of what we do with the test results, and that is all about applying the correct pathways to give our children the best opportunity possible, then I think exams will be less stressful. So having said this, I am under no illusion that exams will have some stress. And I must also qualify that it is not our aim to remove all stress from our children. It is not possible, and that should not be our aim. Our aim is to make sure that we stretch our students appropriately, not too much, not too little. But having said that, we as parents, we as educators, we need to focus on these four sets of issues and hopefully find the correct answers for ourselves. Why we test, how we test, when we test, and what do we do with the test results. Thank you, Speaker.
Ms. Fumiha.
Thank you, Speaker. I have two clarifications, one for Minister, Education Minister, and the other for MOS Gan. So the first question, Minister shared that we spend about $250,000 per child in the formative school years and affirmed that more will be invested in CET. So I'd like to ask the minister, and I spoke about CET currently in this financial year is estimated to be less than 10% of MOE's budget. So I'd like to ask the minister to elaborate exactly how funding for CET will be enhanced to allow it to attain to allow workers to attain a more substantial qualifications that's relevant to their work. So more investment. How exactly do you see that being evolved over time? The second question is for MOS Gan. MOS spoke a lot about career conversions program, place and train and place, and I do agree that these have been very useful for those where career is in transition. But I would like to ask about the framework that MOE is thinking for those who are still employed. So they're not in transition, they're still employed, and that's the majority of the people. These are the people who would like to pursue CET to develop mastery, as well as updating their skills and knowledge on about constant upgrade. So how can we ensure the CET programs are duly certified and recognized by the employers, as well as ensure that CET credentials are recognized within the industry to allow mobility across employers in the same sector? Thank you.
I'd like to remind members to keep their clarifications short, please.
I'd like to thank Ms. Fumi Ha for the two questions. I'll attempt to take both of them. First, on the CET funding, actually our spending on CET has actually increased steadily over the years. And for this year's budget, what we think we will do, substantially to strengthen the CET funding is actually through the SCTP, the career transition program that I mentioned earlier on, where you would have noticed that this Skills Future career transition program is actually quite different from the past CET programs that we had under SSG. You notice that it's more holistic. Actually, it goes from beginning to the end. The beginning portion we will put in skills advisory, training advisory type of discussion with the trainee, so that the trainee can pick suitable courses, not just what he or she likes to do, but what we think might help the person get a job and also meet the person's aspirations. I think that upfront is actually quite important. The second thing about the SCTP is on the industry involvement, and that requires us to work with industries, and some funding will be required for us to be able to scale this up. And the third, the career coaching element and employment facilitation services. These are also very substantial investments that we are putting in. So it's not a CET, just training alone, but also, translating it into getting jobs, good jobs for the individuals. Actually, we learn a lot from this SG United Jobs and Skills journey. We learned that individuals on their own, when they pick courses, the courses may not lead them to where they want to go. So actually, upstream intervention is needed, and also early career coaching, helping them discover their career goals, and providing that facilitation can make a big difference in helping a person land a better job. So all in all, this investment in CET will go up substantially in this year's budget. The second point about career conversion, indeed, there are many people, while they are already employed, are thinking of how to upskill, what to train themselves in, how to make themselves employable for a much longer term in their lifetime. I would say that actually over time, we have also taken on board a lot of feedback from individuals as well as from companies on what would be useful, what mode of training would be useful. So you would have noticed that now there is a lot more of those bite-sized modules provided by our IHLs and training providers. Some are online, some offline, all to tailor to the needs of busy working adults, who actually want to upskill themselves, but may not have the complete time flexibility to be able to do so consistently. So it's important that we build in a a wide range of types of courses, different modalities, and have a lot of flexibility for individuals to be able to choose courses, not just in terms of content that suits their needs, but the form of delivery. On the recognition of this type of training, we are taking a holistic review of our skills frameworks, and in fact, we are working closely with our colleagues in MTI and MOM as well to make sure that the training investments, the courses that we provide to Singaporeans, the courses will be recognized, not just by the institutions and training providers, but actually more importantly, by the industries, by the employers. Thanks.
Sir Leon Pereira.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one point of clarification to the Minister, Dr. Maliki, who addressed my card, and it's in relation to my card, where I asked if the government can publish data by SES background for admissions into the different categories of schools, government, government-aided, and independent. I think that having some transparency about that would be helpful to help us to monitor our progress, to ensure that the more popular and well-resourced schools do not become closed communities, and that's a goal I think we all share. And I would hope that the government would consider just making that data public. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I thank Mr. Leon Pereira for the supplementary question. I just want to start off by saying that we understand that what he's saying is we should have good mix of students to encourage social mixing for students from different academic backgrounds in our schools. So we must begin with the premise that no one education setting fits all students. Although we have the same objectives in mind, we want to make sure that there's a good mix. Students learn to grow in their adolescent period, understanding the real world. But I want to assure Mr. Leon that most schools have good representation from different socioeconomic backgrounds. At the same time, our government and government-aided schools are largely representative of the national average. Even our independent schools, the specialized independent schools, there's some variation from the national average by virtue of the performance of the students at the PSA I mentioned earlier, at the PQ by Mr. Louis Ng earlier, that there is a correlation between socioeconomic background and performance at PSLE, for example. But this independent school cater to specific learner profiles that are different and with different aptitudes. But really our fundamental objective is not to achieve identical profile for every school. Even our neighborhood schools, so to speak, neighborhood schools, they are identical in broad-based curriculum, but they are unique in some specific aspects. And because of that, almost all secondary schools, in fact, all secondary schools today actually admit students in secondary 1 through DSAs, which means that they are able to niche themselves sufficiently. And what does DSA mean? DSA means that people from different unique talents go into the school. And we want to encourage that. We want to encourage that diversity in our school system, in our school environment. So in the independent school, for example, we provide that opportunity for students from the different backgrounds to interact. And actually for independent schools today, roughly we have close to half of our students come from our public housing. So there are good spread of students from different socioeconomic backgrounds in all our schools, including our independent schools, and Mr. Leong talked about they're well-resourced. I want to assure Mr. Leong that all our schools are well-resourced. In fact, in my speech, I spoke about resourcing schools with higher needs. Because they have got higher needs, we want to give the students the best that they could get, and we respond to that accordingly. But even if we do see situations where schools may not have the demographic profile that reflects the national profile, we also encourage them to use other platforms for integration, for students to interact and appreciate the Singapore society profile. So, for example, once the students are in school, we facilitate them through interactions like values in action projects, not just within the school, but across schools, projects at CCAs, joint CCAs, joint camps, camp level, cohort level camps, many opportunities for the students to interact. So while the school provides certain experience which are relevant with right understanding of and objectives, it doesn't mean that our students are not interacting, they are not mingling with students from different socioeconomic backgrounds. Just to give some examples, for example, IP schools. IP schools are doing this too. They are also interacting with other students. So, for example, Anglo-Chinese Independent works with Queensway Secondary on their program called the Play Inclusive program. You have got Raffles Institution working with Crest Secondary, collaborating with students and scouts in their CCA, doing projects, community projects together. You have got Raffles Girls' School with Edgefield Secondary, with Kwanyang Secondary, collaborating on CCA programs. So it doesn't mean that we need to just focus ourselves on the profile of students in that particular schools, when, as I mentioned earlier, in almost all our schools, the profile are generally reflective of our socioeconomic backgrounds of our students. Mr. Chairman, I just want to have make one clarification to my earlier speech earlier. I had said that in response to Mr. Cheryl Taha and Dr. Shahira, I said 9 in 10 of our ITE students are employed within the first 6 months. The correct figure was 8 in 10. But I did, maybe it was a mix to the point about 9 in 10 of our technical diploma students get employed within 6 months. Just a clarification. Thank you.
Associate Professor James Lim. Keep it short, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have 2 questions for Minister Chan. The first builds on the question by Member Patrick Tay about abolishing the mid-year. Could I just clarify that the weight that was originally to be assigned to the mid-year will actually go to continuous assessment instead? Because if not, of course, removing the mid-year just means that the final exam becomes even higher stakes and is more stressful. And related to this, has the Ministry considered actually lowering the weight on this so-called synoptic assessment? The second question is just to clarify, Minister also said earlier on that the later school start times, he mentioned that there were many other schools with later starts. How many schools or what proportion of schools have these later starts for at least the majority of the school days? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the answer to Mr. Lim's first question is that the weights in the different schools differ slightly because of the different profiles of the students. And if you like to know the specific weights for the different school, then I think we can provide him with the information. But as I've mentioned, the school profiles are all different, and we shouldn't try to homogenize or have a one-size-fits-all measure or yardstick to judge all our students. We are moving towards a system that is much more customized to the respective needs of the students. On the second point, in fact, a lot of our schools have a different start time. Some of them have start time on certain days of the week, but it all depends on when they start, when they end. Some of our schools have kept certain of the afternoons totally free for their students and their teachers to recharge and do other things. What I want to emphasize is this. If we recognize that the learning needs of our students are diverse, if we recognize that the background profiles of our students are diverse. We should strive towards a system that provides more diverse options for our schools, our teachers, and our students. And I think we must have a care to not try to homogenize all the conditions when we in fact have agreed that we need greater diversity, which was why I mentioned in my speech, actually MOE just have one very simple rule. Thou shalt not start school before 7:30. But I have gotten feedback from different schools when they want to start and also when they want to end. Which day they want to start later and how much later. In fact, this is a very good exercise for our students and teachers to come together and decide collectively what are their priorities and how do they prioritize the time. And I would be very careful as the Minister for Education to try to dictate for every school, given their different conditions, to have the same start or end time. I think I want my teachers, I want my students to have that agency to take charge of this and come to a reasonable understanding of where they want to be, given their different conditions.
I'll squeeze in one more clarification. Dr. Wan Rizal, you can keep it short and the responses can be short as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question revolves around the mental well-being of the students and teachers. Maybe I start with teachers first. So, sir, thank you for laying out these plans that you have for the teachers. But I think what is missing right now for the teachers is really a hard cap on their working hours, because they tend to mark and it goes beyond their working hours. So that's number one. Can the ministry consider that as part of the clarification? Number two is really on the students.
There's one clarification. Thank you. We do need to read instructions.
Mr. Chair, in fact, the question that Dr. Wan Riza posed, I've asked my teachers in my weekly visits to the schools, do they want a hard cap? Is it practical to have a hard cap? I'm actually very heartened by the answers given to me by my teachers. Actually, we all know our teachers work way beyond what we expect of them in taking care of our children. In fact, for some of the high needs students, our teachers have no cap whatsoever. I visited Northlight School, a very challenging group of students. Sometimes they get into trouble with their families. Sometimes they get kicked out of their home in the middle of the night. But guess what? So many teachers in Northlight gave their personal handphone number to their students to call them if they ever get into trouble outside school or if they ever got kicked out of their home. And we have teachers that responded in the middle of the night, way past midnight, to pick up a student to take care of them. So, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, I think we all appreciate the point that we want to take care of our teachers and we want to do more. We want all, in our different ways, to try to alleviate the workload for our teachers by partnering them, by not overly burdening them with unrealistic expectations. We all can do something, but I think it's also very unrealistic for us to put such a cap on our teachers. And even if I do, I don't think my teachers will stop just because they consciously calculate that my time is up and therefore I will not respond to this high-need student of mine. I think that is something immeasurable. That is something that speaks to the quality of our education workforce, the kind of people that we have in the system that make our education system something that we can all be proud of, make our education system able to continue to function, notwithstanding the COVID. So yes, MOE will continue to see how we can lighten the workload of our teachers by making sure that we review the curriculum, applying technologies, and so forth. That's our promise to our teachers. We want to do that. But I think it is also not realistic for us to therefore say that every teacher shall not work more than X hours because their conditions are different. The types of students they are managing are different. And I have seen all my teachers, including the very good teachers and counselors in Northlight, going way beyond their call of duty in order to take care of all our children. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Patrick Tay, would you like to withdraw your amendment?
So I'd like to thank our fellow GPC members as well as members of this House who have filed cuts for MOE's COS so that we can hear their thoughts, ideas and suggestions. Having had 3 children, one doing A-levels this year, one doing PSLE as well, and another one doing O-levels next year, I thank Minister Chan Chun Sing, Minister Maliki, MOS Huang and MOS Sun Xueling and the entire MOE COS team for powering this entire COS and bringing us fresh perspectives as well as some of the policies, announcements and programs to make our education more caring, more inclusive and more future ready. At the same time also I put on record our thanks to DG Huang who will retire from service end of this month. Big thank you to him as well. And for the entire MOE team for giving us a good sharing of solving tomorrow's challenges with tomorrow's solutions. And on that final note, a big thank you to all our teachers and educators, past, present, and incoming, for building this love for learning and embracing lifelong learning so that each and every one of us can stay future-ready, future-proof, and be ready with the new skills, relevant to the new jobs, and resilient to the future. Thank you. With that, I beg leave to withdraw my amendment.
Is the honourable member given leave to withdraw the amendment? I think leave of the majority is given. The amendment is withdrawn. The question is that the sum of $13,410,729,900 for head K, send part of the main estimates. As many as of that opinion say aye. To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is that the sum of $393,400,000 for head K, send part of the development estimates. As many as of that opinion say aye. To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.